Welcome back, hunters, and as I said, this episode is going to be the last episode of my Monster Hunter World Mix Set series as far as the vanilla game is concerned. I'll be back as soon as I can get my hands on Iceborne and sink my teeth in, but for this last episode, this season finale as they say, I wanted to focus on my main weapon, my favorite weapon, the sword and the shield. So this is my mighty sword and shield build, which, guys, comes in 4 different flavors. So for the first flavor, we're going to center this around the Fatal Bite Sword and Shield. Your headpiece is going to be the Dragon King Eye Patch Alpha. The Kulf Taroth Ire Gamma is going to go on the chest. The Xeno'jiiva Claws Gamma is going to go on your arms. The Xeno'jiiva Spine Gamma goes on the waist. The Xeno'jiiva Spurs Gamma on your legs. And finally, a Handicraft Charm in the charm slot. For decos and skills, we're going to have a Jumping Jewel on the head, an Attack Jewel on the chest, a Tenderizer Jewel, another Jumping Jewel, and another Attack Jewel on the arms, a Jumping Jewel and an Attack Jewel on the waist, the Sharp Jewel and 2 more Attack Jewels on the legs. All in all, this gives you Attack Boost level 5, Handicraft level 5, Weakness Exploit level 3, Evade Extender level 3, Critical Boost at 2, 1 point of Power Prolonger, 1 point of Agitator, Special Ammo Boost, which is used, and Protective Polish. The set bonus for running on this one is the Xeno'jiiva Divinity, which is Razor Sharp, which halves your sharpness loss. This next build uses one of the Lunastra weapons, the Empress Edge Styx. On the headpiece, we're going to be running the Zora Headgear Gamma. We're going to pop the Empress Male Beta on the chest, the Kaiser Vambrace's Gamma on the arms, the Zora Spine Gamma on the waist, and the Zora Spurs Gamma on the legs, finishing it off with an Ironside Charm. As for decos and skills, a Shield Jewel and Blast Jewel is going to go into the weapon, a Tenderizer Jewel is going to go onto the head, 3 Attack Jewels are going to go onto the chest, an additional Attack Jewel is going to go in the arms, a Sharp Jewel and a Tenderizer Jewel goes on the waist, with a Flawless and a Tenderizer Jewel going on the legs. All in all, this gives you 7 in Critical Eye, 4 in Attack Boost, 3 in Blast Attack, 3 on Weakness Exploit, 3 in Peak Performance, 3 in Guard, 2 in Windproof, 2 in Bombardier, Guard Up, Protective Polish, and the set bonus Zora Magdaros Mastery, which is Critical Status. This next set fully utilizes the Drachen armor, along with pairing it with one of arguably the best elemental sword and shields in the game. We've got the Kjárr Slicer Stream, that's the Ice Sword and Shield from the Arc-Tempered Kulf Taroth Hunt. The headpiece is going to be the Dragon King Eye Patch Alpha, with remainder of the build all from the Drachen set. So we got the Drachen Mail, Vambraces, Coil, and Greaves. Top it off with the Ironside Charm in the charm slot. On to decos and skills. We're going to put an Attack Jewel in the weapon, a Flawless Jewel is going to go into the head and the chest, a Flight Jewel is going to go into the arms with a Critical Jewel, an additional Flawless Jewel is going into the waist with a Tenderizer Jewel in the legs. This gives us level 6 in Critical Eye, level 4 in Attack Boost, level 3 in Critical Boost, 3 points in Weakness Exploit, 3 points in Peak Performance, 3 in Guard, Power Prolonger, Airborne, and Critical Element. The set bonus we're going to be running is from the Soul of the Dragoon, which gives you both Elemental Airborne and Master's Touch. This last one's going to be all about regen. We're going to be running the Empress Edge Ruin, the Kaiser Crown Gamma on the head, the Valhazak Mail on the chest, the Kaiser Vambrace's Gamma on the arms, the Valhazak Coil on the waist, and the Kaiser Greaves on the legs. The charm is going to be the Ironside Charm. On to the decos and skills. We're going to be running a Tenderizer Jewel in the weapon and 2 of them on the head, a Critical Jewel on the chest and the arms, an additional Critical Jewel on the waist with 2 Medicine Jewels. A Sharp Jewel and a Recovery Jewel goes in the legs. This gives us level 7 max in Critical Eye, level 3 max in Recovery Up, level 3 max in Recovery Speed, max in Critical Boost at level 3, max in Weakness Exploit at level 3, 3 points in Guard, Dragon Attack, which we don't really use, Peak Performance 1, Protective Polish, and Hasten Recovery from the weapon. The set bonus we're going to be running is the Teostra Technique Master's Touch. Alright guys, and now let's get into the concepts and best use scenarios of running each of these builds. A high raw damage with some decent dragon element. The Fatal Bite is one of the hardest hitting sword and shields in the game, and it works perfectly with a build that's centered around damaging a monster. This build in a way mirrors that of the Devil Joe, which the weapon is made out of. You're going to want to attack as aggressively as Jeho is. Now while normally I like to let the user pick their augments, I highly suggest running at least an attack augment on top of a health regen augment with this build. Attack boost at level 5 helps to boost your attack and chip away at that negative affinity, with max and weakness exploit boosting you to 35% affinity as long as you're hitting weak spots. Critical boost is useful for the times that you do crit, and with Agitator granting you a nice little attack boost when your prey is angry, this is a very beefy build. Max and Handicraft helps this beefy sword and shield flex even more damage by boosting it to white sharpness. And since this is an elemental weapon and the sword and shield benefits from elemental builds, you're going to want to keep that white sharpness as long as possible. And that's where Protective Polish comes in. Protective Polish coupled with the Zen'jiva set bonus ensures that you're going to keep that white sharpness as long as possible. Now you won't be blocking too much save for a few mild hits, but defensively you will have something at your arsenal. With Evade Extender maxed out, you'll be able to jump farther, which allows you to fully dodge some of the biggest hits and not have to worry too much about your positioning. You still have to have your timing right, but it's better than nothing, right folks? Now for this next build, we're going to be using one of the more unique weapons in the game, coming from the Lunastra Setri. This build comes complete with a decent raw, 95% affinity, and a blast element. Blast is one of my favorite abnormal statuses to inflict. It's kind of like a surprise mechanic, but instead of dropping cash for FIFA card packs, you build up a blast threshold to eventually blow up a monster. In this particular fight actually, I detonated Blast on Gigante 7 times throughout the course of it, and I wasn't even trying to beat him as fast as possible. Now, this build is equally strong offensively and defensively. On the defense side, this is the build that benefits from guarding. 3 points in guard greatly decreases the impact of attacks while reducing your stamina depletion, while guard up allows you to block the normally unguardable attacks like Teostra Supernova. On the offensive front, max critical eye, attack boost at level 4, and weakness exploit yield that 95% affinity, so as long as you're hitting weak spots, you're going to be critting almost every time. This is crucial because we're going to be running the Zora set bonus here, Critical Status, which increases the abnormal status effect during critical hits. A max rating in Blast ensures that you're going to do the most blast damage, and peak performance at max grants a generous plus 22 attack. And to further satisfy the Medeep's crowd, the inherent white sharpness of the weapon is further preserved thanks to Protective Polish. On top of Razor's Sharp that comes in the weapon, it's a weapon you're probably not going to have to sharpen nearly as often as you think. Now this next build takes the meta 4-piece Drachen approach and applies it to an elemental Kjárr sword and shield, specifically the ice element one. With a generous amount of elemental damage and 90% affinity, this alone makes this a powerhouse sword and shield build. But wait, there's more. This build is built specifically around the Drachen set bonus. Wearing 4 pieces gives you Soul of the Dragoon, which grants you Elemental Airborne and Master's Touch. Those of you who have been watching my channel know that I love using the Master's Touch set bonus, and it's mostly because I don't like the downtime from having to sharpen my weapon. Pairing that with 90% affinity and you'll be critting almost every time you hit a weak spot, which makes it one less thing for you to worry about if you don't have to sharpen. Critical boost at max grants that 40% increase to critical hits, and top that off with critical element, you'll be doing the maximum amount of ice damage when you do crit. Staying true to the Soul of the Dragoon, this is a truly aerial build. Tag teaming Airborne with Elemental Airborne, which increases the elemental damage for jumping attacks and adds a 10% modifier to your jumping attack power. And of course, there is still more. Slotting at peak performance further bolsters your damage output by granting an additional plus 22 attack when your health is full, something should happen more often than not as long as you're running a regen augment on your weapon. When hunts do get hairy and you need to defend yourself, 3 points in guard make this build more than just a crit-hungry heavy hitter. You can rest assured that you can survive some of the biggest hits the monster can toss your way. Whether by land or by air, you can count on this SNS flavor to hit the spot. And finally, for the hunter that wants to channel their inner vampire, I've got a lifesteal heavy mix set built around the Ruin SNS for you. Now this is one that's made if you're not fully confident in your ability to mitigate the damage that you're taking in, but at the same time want a decent build to run with. Full disclosure by the way, you won't be breaking any speedrun records with this build. It's built more around comfort and safety, rather than maximizing your DPS. 3 recovery skills make up the crux of this build. Recovery up at max increases the amount of health recovered by 30%. Recovery speed at max quadruples the speed that you recover your regeneratable health. And finally, Hasten Recovery, which is built into the Ruin weapon, regenerates health in one big burst as you attack a monster. Now, the community has been pretty split on this ability. It's normally a set bonus built into wearing 3 pieces of Nergigante armor, but Hasten Recovery works very well with Recovery Up. And as long as you're like me and you add that health regen augment to your weapon, you're going to be bringing in more health than be taken out of you. Just keep on attacking a monster and don't let up the pressure. To add a little spice to the build, I factored in max and critical eye and weakness exploit to grant me 80% affinity. Now while it's not as high as some of my other builds, 80% still skews heavily in your favor when landing critical hits. Top that off with the Master's Touch set bonus and protective polish and you'll rarely have to stop and sharpen. Max and critical boost is also helpful while staying true to the safety gimmick of this weapon. The more damage you do, the more health you bring in. This being a safer build, I still opted for only 3 points in guard. Since the difference between level 3 and level 5 is the stamina depletion, and the SNS isn't exactly a stamina hungry weapon, I think we're pretty good here. Thank you once again for checking out my Monster Hunter World Mix Set series. It's been awesome with you guys. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you like my stuff. Thumbs up the video if you like my stuff. And I will catch you guys when I catch you guys. So you stay frosty hunters and get lifted. See ya after Iceborne.